So it says Joe received an hourly wage of $8.50. His boss gave him a 7% raise. So we need to add 7%. So does anyone know how to convert 7% to a decimal? Would that be 0.7 or 0.07? 0.7 or 0.07. If you're not sure, take your calculator and take 7 divided by 100. That's how you convert a decimal, a percentage to a decimal. So what's 7 divided by 100? 0.7. 0.7 is 70%. Okay, so he didn't get a 70% raise. He got a 7% raise. So step number 1 would be to multiply $8.15 times 0.07. That's going to tell you how much more money is going to be added to his hourly rate. So take $8.15 times 0.07. $8.15, yeah. So then what does that round to? How many cents? 57 cents. So that means that he's getting an extra 57 cents. So now we're going to add his old hourly rate and 57 cents. And you should get that his new hourly rate is $8.72. Okay, so today we're going to do some factoring and sketching. And so in your notes, I believe we're going to page, what page is that? I think it's 17. Hold on, let me see. In your notes, go to page 17. All right, so before we get started, we have to state the number of roots. The number of roots is always your highest exponent. So because there's a 3, that means I'm looking for 3 roots. So this is an odd degree, which means the arrows are going to go opposite directions. And because the 5 is positive, that tells me that this side is going to go up and this side is going to go down. So that's kind of important as we start to sketch. So we're looking for 3 solutions and we're going to factor it. Step number 1, look for your greatest common factor. What can I take out of all 3? What's my GCF? X. So that's my first factor. And when I do that, I'm left with 5x squared plus 13x plus 6. All right, so this is A, B, and C. So we need 2 numbers that multiply to give you 5 times 6, because you always take A times C. 5 times 6 is what? 30. And they add to 13. So don't say it out loud. Try to find your 2 numbers that multiply to 30 and add to 13. That's the process. It's always been A times C. That's how we factor. That's how we always have factored. That's how you always will factor. A times C goes on top of the X, and B goes on the bottom. So anybody know my numbers that multiply to 30 and add to 13? Nehemiah? 10 and 3. So let's go ahead and make our box. When you make your box, the A term goes top left, C goes bottom right, and the other 2, put your 10x and your 3x. So now let's take out our greatest common factor. So in the top row, 5x squared and 10x can both be divided by 5x. And then we have a 3. And then I have an x, and then I have a 2. So my factors are x, x plus 2, and 5x plus 3. So let's set all 3 of these equal to 0. So x equals 0, x plus 2 equals 0, and 5x plus 3 equals 0. Go ahead and get your 3 solutions. Because remember at the beginning we said we're looking for 3 answers. These are going to give us our 3 answers. So for our second one, we're going to subtract the 2, which gives you x equals -2. For the third one, we're going to subtract the 3 and divide by 5, which gives you x equals -3/5. So those are our 3 answers. So we got 2 negative answers and 1 at 0. So now we need to do our sketch. Sorry, y'all. All right, so when we do our sketch, let me go up here. And we said we have 0, and then we got 2 numbers that are negative. So it's gonna start from the bottom, go up, go through. And that would be the sketch. So again, this is a sketch, which means it's not accurate. It's just the shape of the graph, an approximation of the graph. Any questions about number 1?
Would that be counted as a bounce?
No, a bounce doesn't go through, but we will have some coming up soon. All right, let's look at our next one. What would be my GCF? What can I take out of 9x cubed minus x squared? X squared. So we're going to divide both of these by x squared. So that comes to the front. And then I have 9x minus 1 left. All right, so we're going to take the x squared, set that equal to 0. 9x minus 1, set that equal to 0. Go ahead and solve. So for the first one, when you take the square root of 0, you get 0. So x equals 0. Now because that factor started off squared, this one is going to bounce. At 0, it's going to bounce. It's not going to go through it, because we took out an x squared. For the second one, I'm going to add the 1 and divide by 9, so I get 1/9. This one is going to go through, because this had an exponent of 1. So when we do our sketch, again, looking at this original one here, this is an odd degree and it's positive, which means it's going to go opposite ways again. All right, so let's go ahead and sketch it. So we got a point at 0. And then I also have a point somewhere on the positive side. So remember, it's going to come up, it's going to hit the 0, it's going to bounce back down, make a U-turn, and then go through. So that's the sketch. So it doesn't go through at the 0, it bounces off 0. But it does go through at 1/9. Okay. Let's look at the next one. First step. Well, this is an even because this is squared and it's positive, which means that both arrows, instead of going opposite, they're going to go the same. And they're actually going to go up. So that's my end behavior. So now let's look for our greatest common factor. 15 and 3 can both be divided by 3. And we can also take out an x. So 3x is my first factor. And then we have 15 divided by 3, which is 5x plus, and then 3 divided by 3 is 1. All right, let's set both of these equal to 0. Go ahead and get your two solutions. One of them is a fraction and one of them is 0. So for the first one, 3x equals 0. We divide both sides by 3. And we get x equals 0. Go ahead and plot that point. The second one, we subtract the 1 and divide by 5. We get x equals a negative 1 over 5, which is somewhere over here. Plot that point. And then we just draw a graph that goes through, because this time they're both going through because both of these have a power of 1. So it goes through at the 0, and it also goes through at negative 1/5. Any questions so far? So the homework you should be able to do after today, 1 through 6, but really all of them. All right, let's keep going. So now let's look at page 18. And remember in this little box where it says, if you take the square root of negative 1, remember that that is equal to I. It's imaginary. So we talked about this earlier in the semester. I can't really remember. I think it was the first test maybe, all the way back in August. But just as a reminder, okay, I'm trying to write neat and this is messy. So let me write this one more time. Imaginary. Want you all to be able to read my handwriting. So, all right. So go ahead and write that there because we will have some imaginary in these next 3 examples. So this is a 4th degree, which is even. So this is an even positive. I always like to start with that, which tells me that my arrows are going to go up. It's always important to kind of start off with that. And if you don't remember, I still have that on the backboard. Even positive, both go up. Even negative, they both go down. Odd is opposite. Yeah, because the x is positive. So there's an invisible positive 1 right here in front of x. Okay, so now let's look for our GCF, which in this case is x squared. So this is actually just like number 5 in your homework. So we're going to divide both of these by x squared. So that means that's my first factor that I'm going to solve for x. And when I do that, I'm left with x squared plus 49 equals 0. So those are my 2 factors that we're going to solve for x. both of these are going to bounce because they're both squared. Yep. All right, so for the first one, when we take the square root, we get x equals 0, and like Sean said, it's going to bounce. Now, the second one is a little different. This is where taking the square root of the negative is going to come into play. The first thing we're going to do is subtract 49. And then I'm going to take the square root of negative 49. So this is going to break apart to x equals the square root of negative 1 times 49. Anytime there's a negative underneath the square root, you have to take it apart. So if you have a calculator and you try to type in the square root of negative 49, it's going to tell you that you can't do it. It's imaginary. So we have to take out the negative. This is going to equal I. So this equals I. And the square root of 49 is 7. And this is 2 answers. So you can write it as I7, but most books write it as 7I. But it doesn't matter. All right, so let's go ahead and plot these 2 points. Because this is imaginary, imaginaries don't touch the x-axis. So even though there are 4 solutions, it's only going to touch the x-axis at 0. So let's go ahead and graph it. Let's sketch it. So I'm going to put a point at 0. You have 2 options. You can either make it do this. It can either make a squiggle on the left side of the y-axis, or you can make it so that, because remember, it bounces here and then somewhere in the air it does a little squiggle, because this is the imaginary. We can't really graph it accurately. We just know that it kind of just makes a little U-turn, but it doesn't come down far enough to actually touch the x-axis. All right, we only got a couple more, then we will finish for today, and you should have time to work on homework 5, and I got a lot of papers to pass back. All right, let's go ahead and look at the next one here. Again, this is even positive. So they're both going to go up. So we start by taking out our GCF, which is x squared. That's my first factor. And then when you divide, you get x squared plus 64 equals 0. And this is going to be imaginary again. So take a minute and try to solve both of those. First one, we take the square root and we get 0, which again is going to bounce because that was an x squared. For the second one, I subtract the 64 and you get that x squared equals negative 64. But when you take the square root, you have to separate that negative. So x equals plus and minus I8. I'm gonna write it that way because I got a feeling most of you are gonna write it I8 instead of 8I. So these are your two solutions. This is actually counts as 4 solutions. This one again is imaginary, so this one does not touch. So when we do our sketch, it's only touching at 0. It's gonna come down. This sketch actually looks just like the last sketch. So you can make it look just like the one you did before it. All right, this is our last one. Again, this is another even positive. So both arrows go up. Let's take out our GCF, which is 8x squared. And that's going to leave you with x squared plus 9 equals 0. Go ahead and solve them both. The blue factor is going to be imaginary because you have to take the square root of -9. And all 3 of these sketches should look the same for the last 3, these last 3 problems. It's going to bounce off the 0 and then do a squiggle some other place. So x equals 0, it bounces. And then what did you get when you solved the x squared plus 9? X equals plus and minus what? 3i, yeah? So we're gonna subtract the 9. And then we take the square root. So it looks something like it's going to hit the 0, bounce, and then do a squiggle. Use this time now. Can everyone look at the homework 5 that you just picked up? Can you write on there that it is due on Wednesday? You can actually do all of the homework. I would probably start off with numbers 1 and 2. You just need to factor. 1 and 2 in the homework, you factor it and solve it. A, B, C, make the box. 4 is GCF, 3 is GCF, 5 and 6 is just like what we finished doing just now. So you can probably finish most of it, if not half of it, today. And again, this one here is due Wednesday. Also, you do have a test. We have a test this week on Friday. Tomorrow, I'm passing out the study guide for that test. So we're in November on Friday, so we're really close to the end of the semester. So we want to make sure we do the best we can.